Rambling Canuck here. Finally, for the What If series. And joining me on the panel is Honstar YT. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Always good to see you, Canuck. Good to talk to
Always
you.
good, always good. So, I've decided since you abandoned our history show, I would bring it to my show.
I don't know you want this on your history show, but the reason I abandoned my history show is because I got way too drunk every night.
Well, that's because you were
Because it was
silly and
called,
made it a. Yeah,
I mean, it was
Bloody
called
Mary
Bloody Mary
Brunch.
Brunch, and I would be doing a disservice to the audience if I didn't actually drink real Bloody
Bloody
Marys.
Marys.
So it started with one or two, and by the time it was over with, because it kind of went on and on, it was like 5, 6 bloody.
Well, that's
Marys.
because I kept yapping for 4 hours. And.
Yeah, but I mean, it is what it is.
But anyway, to the point of the video today. Today's video is going to be what happened if Germany does not declare war on the United States in 42. So Pearl Harbor has just happened. Historically, Germany, for some weird unknown reason, actually declares war on a country, which is a first for them. And they declared war on the United States, which then allowed Roosevelt to use the Western theater first, Japan second. And it allowed the United States to go in and join Britain in World War II. Today we're going to look at what happens if Germany doesn't declare war in 42. Does the United States still go into the Western theater? What do you think?
I think eventually they would. I don't think they would right away.
Yeah, that's my thinking too.
I think eventually they would not say bow down, but they would eventually hear the cries of Britain as our ally and France and these other countries, and eventually they would go into it. But I believe if Germany had not declared war after Pearl Harbor, I think the main focus of the United States would have been Japan.
Yes.
I do believe eventually they would have been pulled into the European battlefields, but I think they would have made Japan their main issue.
Yeah, because I mean, if you look at the build-up to that, to Pearl Harbor, the American people as a whole were like, "Well, that's a European war. We're not getting involved in another European war. We remember
Well, yeah,
World War One.
yeah,
We're not.
that's
That's
what I was
their
gonna
war to
say.
fight,
Yeah,
not ours. Right?
yeah,
We're happy to make
that's
money off of it, but we're not." We're not really willing to
well,
sacrifice our boys for
we're
another
more than welcome
European
to
battle.
provide you weapons, anything you need other than people, because like you said, we remember World War One. We came to your aid in World War One, and everybody got screwed basically in World War One. There was,
Yeah.
I mean, technically there was a winner, but everybody got screwed in World War One. And
Yeah.
I agree with you on that. I think they would have kept to the thought of, look, this is a European war. It's over there. We
Yeah.
don't really
And
care
I mean,
because it's not here.
yeah, and I mean Pearl Harbor. The reason the United States finally does enter World War II is because they're attacked on their home, their home soil, and
Which
galvanized American people. Without that declaration of war, are like, yeah, but these fuckers attacked us. Go
yeah,
after them.
and they were totally blindsided by it because other than rare occurrences and mostly in history way previous to World War II, we've been kind of an island to ourselves, so to speak, even though we're technically not an island.
Yeah, the United
And
States was very
the,
isolationist.
the wars that we have fought have been in faraway places. They have not been brought to the American people. And although it was Hawaii, not the mainland of
Yeah,
America, the United States, whatever you want to call it,
it was still an
it was
American base.
still, yeah, it was still on our front porch.
Yeah.
And that was something we totally were not accustomed to
No,
compared to all the
and I mean
wars that
that
have
was
been fought in Europe, over time.
yeah, it was most of your Pacific Fleet. And I was like, well, no, 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 because I think what would have happened would have been like I agree. Eventually, the United States would have been pulled into the Battle of Europe, but it wouldn't have been 42. Roosevelt would have not have been able to get the support to then because under this scenario it would have been the United States then declaring war on Germany, not the other way around,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? And I can't see him politically being able to sell that to the American people. Okay, yeah, Japan attacked us, but we're going to declare war on Germany, who didn't attack us. I mean, they did, but wasn't publicized. Who didn't attack us, and we're going to go fight the European war, and we're going to leave Japan alone for a while. But trust me, we need to deal with Germany first. I don't think he would have been able to sell that. The only reason he was able to sell that to the American people is because Hitler was a moron and declared war 2 days later.
Yeah,
so he got to save face.
You have the American people that are already riled up about Pearl Harbor. Okay,
Yeah.
you have the horrible Japanese imperial force that's over here. Well, now Hitler, who's already been raining hell down on Europe and attacking our allies in Europe, also declares war. Well, let's rattle the sabers of war.
Yeah.
And
But
like you said, I don't think if Hitler had not declared war, like you were just saying, the American people would have been like, why do we care what's going on in Europe? We care about the Japanese because they bombed the shit out of us in Pearl Harbor.
Yeah, it's like, well, deal with I really think that Roosevelt would have been forced to go Japan first, Germany second. If Germany had not declared war on the United States, he would have not had the support to be able to go into the Western theater at all.
And I would go as far as to say, I don't think he could have even been drawn into the Western theater until England was almost ready to fall.
Yeah. Yeah, as long as England was still standing, yeah.
That would be the linchpin that would finally, I think, get the American people on his side if he wanted to go after the Western Front or the Western Campaign. Would be, okay, England is on the verge of falling. All of continental Europe has already fell. England is about ready to fall.
Mm-hmm.
They're our ally. We need to prop them up or help them out. But I think that would have been the only thing that would have brought us into the European theater in World War II.
Yeah,
would have been
London falling.
Well, yeah,
because here's another interesting fact. Would the American people still allow Lend-Lease?
Oh,
right, because that's now you're deterring war supplies from the Japanese effort. Right.
So I didn't even think about that.
Think about that. I mean, the United States was doing Lend-Lease to Russia, to England, to anybody that was opposing Germany, including China at the time.
Yeah.
Would that have affected Lend-Lease? Because then the American people would be like, well, during peacetime, oh yeah, sure, we'll sell all our weapons and stuff over there, but we need that shit now because we got to go against Japan.
Honestly, if you put it that way, and I'm glad you brought that up because I never even thought about that. But after you bring that up, I think we basically, and I hate to say it this way, we basically would have left England to their own devices.
Yeah, because of the American.
If Hitler had not declared war, we'd have left basically England to their own devices. Like, look, we got our own thing to do. We're
Uh-huh.
focusing on Japan. We're focusing on the war in the Pacific. Sorry.
Yeah, it's like I'm sorry, but we can't afford the aircraft right now, and we can't afford the tanks because we need those for, you know,
Yeah,
the
they
Philippines
would
just
have put.
got, you know, no. I mean, I think MacArthur would have loved it because he would have been the main focus. He would have
Oh
been even
yeah,
more of a focus because he's the general on the front lines. Um, but I mean, if anything, I think Roosevelt
well,
would have been pressuring Britain to do more in the Pacific because it would have been, well, we've been helping you for years with supplies and food and stuff. We need you to hold your damn bases in the Pacific. What the hell?
yeah.
Um,
You have all these colonies or colonial
mhm.
areas in the Pacific, and now you've moved all of your efforts into your war in Europe. What the hell?
Yeah, exactly. And I don't think the American people would have allowed at Comte Blanche like they did historically for a Western first, like the Western theater first, Japan second. It would have been you put everything you got into getting those bastards. Germany hasn't done anything to us. They don't matter right now. We'll deal with them when we get there. We've got to deal with these idiots who attacked us. And I really
And
think we wouldn't have had the war we had because I don't think the
and
United States would have been able to enter till at least they get rid of the Japanese front. Maybe once they hit Iwo Jima or Okinawa, once they're in that phase, then maybe, but not before.
yeah, I agree with you. They would have 100% put their efforts into Japan, and either A, they would have already conquered Japan, and or B, like you were talking about a few minutes ago, if if mainland England fell, would we then go into a European front, or that would be the only way I would see us going into a European front would be if, and I hadn't even thought about it that way, but if like London fell,
Yeah, because
would we be forced to jump in at that point? Because at that point you have basically a British monarchy and government that's exiled from their
yeah,
own island.
probably in Canada.
Yeah,
Um,
unfortunately for
and
you
no,
Canadians,
not
but
only that, but then you think about it this way: their driving factor would be, well, we can't let Russia have everything,
yeah,
right?
because
And that would be like, I think that would be the pushing point to get the United States finally into that, because if England's left, because here's what the way I see this going down is Pearl Harbor happens. The United States people are pissed. They're galvanized to go after Japan. They don't allow a Western front. They don't. Then they start getting angry because you're diverting a whole bunch of war supplies that we need for the for over here to the Western Front. No, that's got to stop. So now you got to look at it like this: the only one of the main reasons that Russia was even able to push the Germans back was Lend Lease,
yeah,
right? So I see those getting cut by at least half because they're not going to be able to justify sending that much war supplies to a war you're not even fighting
yeah,
because it would
and
divert from the main focus, which would have been Japan. So now you're cutting the resources of England and Russia in almost half, and they barely made it with what they got.
yeah,
So that could have been a
and
very different war.
and slightly taking it away from the European theater. it also makes you wonder if we had put 100% of our efforts, at least for the first years of our involvement in the war, would the atomic bomb have been a thing? Or would we have been able to put 100% of our efforts into island hopping and making it to mainland Japan and crushing? How long could have Japan lasted against the full force of the U.S. Navy and military?
I think the bomb would have still gone ahead because I think they started that in late 42, if I'm not mistaken. It was either 42 or early 43. So I think that would have still gone ahead. However, it might have gone ahead quicker. Because if you're just dealing with...
That's a good point, yeah.
If you're just going, head to head with the Japanese, the death tolls are going to be much higher. Because you're going to be going in a lot faster. Some of the things... Like, some of the reasons that certain battles happened and were won the way they were was because they had a lot of help from the British, not in the sense of troops, but intelligence. Bletchley Park, stuff like that. So the intelligence gathering, the breaking of code. The only reason Midway swung the other way was because the United States broke the Japanese code and knew they were attacking Midway, so they set a trap, and, well, history is history. Yeah. But if they hadn't had pre-warning to Midway, Midway could have actually changed a little bit, and that could have gone very badly for the United States. But they knew ahead of time, so it was all right.
And going by your thoughts, I see what you're saying is you're dealing with a fanatical opponent.
Yeah.
Even compared to Germany, and Germany was fanatical enough.
Yes.
But Japan was a whole nother level of fanatical opponent.
Germany's soldiers would surrender. Japanese soldiers would not.
Yeah.
If you think about it this way, there were Japanese soldiers that stayed in caves for 2 years after the ceasefire.
Well, there was the one guy, the last soldier of World War II, that stayed in a cave on that island until like the 70s or some shit.
Yeah.
And
he just didn't get the memo that the war was over.
He got the memo, but he didn't believe it.
Yeah.
They dropped leaflets and did announcements, and he was like, "Y'all aren't fooling me."
Yeah, it's all propaganda.
So I can see what you're saying. I see that they would see the losses of island hopping.
Yeah.
And since the bomb was already in development, they would not necessarily go after. They would not necessarily go after mainland Japan. They would still drop the bombs.
Mm-hmm. I think the bombs would have still dropped either way. Because that was in the planning for a long time.
They would realize the amount of losses that they would have, from attacking the actual mainland, or the home islands, however you want to say it, of Japan.
Yeah, but it does raise a really interesting question. Just that one little thing, Hitler not declaring war. Your immediate reaction wants to be, oh well, yeah, we'd still declare war on Germany, definitely. But if you look at it, probably not. Not initially, anyway. Because
I agree. I agree with you 100%. And
because
like we said a little bit earlier,
you don't have to look that far back in history. Let's bring this into a modern world aspect and go, okay, 2 days after 9/11. If somebody had said, well, okay, we know that Osama bin Laden is responsible. However, we need to go into this war first.
Yeah.
They've done us no wrong. But we've got to go take care of this first, and then we'll take care of him. That wouldn't have flown then. No. And the American people were not, I would think, probably Pearl Harbor was a more, no, we're going for broke here. I don't think you would have been able to convince the American people to declare war on another country other than Japan.
Yeah. I agree 100%. I think 100% of our focus would have been with the war in the Pacific against Japan. And I also agree with you saying that until London fell, or the home islands, whatever you want to call them, of Japan, England fell, I don't know that we would have been able to enter the war. He could have convinced people to enter the war until basically it was dire straits.
Yeah, because there's just no. Because up until then, I mean, German submarines were not really allowed to attack American targets. I mean, they did, but they weren't supposed to.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, they did. Let's not sugarcoat shite, but I mean, they did.
Oh yeah.
But I mean, it was frowned upon, right? Don't bring in the United States. Don't bring in the United States. Don't give them a reason. And if they had stayed with that mandate, where it's like, no, we have no problem with you. I mean, the only saving grace is Japan and Germany are allies. Well, the easy way to get around that is 2 days after Pearl Harbor, the leader of Germany comes out and condones the attack on the Americans.
Yeah.
Right? Goebbels could have written anything to script that stuff. And what's Japan going to do? Yell at Germany? I don't think so.
Yeah.
Right?
I don't think
They've got Russia on their doorstep. They've got the United States now really thoroughly pissed. They aren't about to turn on the Germans. And it's not like Japan helped the Germans at all, so what do they care?
because like you said, they were allies, but they were allies basically on two separate areas.
Yeah.
It's not
they were allies in principle.
It's not like Japan was in France.
No.
No.
So I mean, it doesn't hurt the German position to just go. We don't condone the attacks that took place 2 days ago, and we are severing our ties with Japan, and blah blah blah, just to keep the Americans out of the war. Right?
They were basically allies under the sense of, we want to take over a lot of shit.
Yeah.
We want to take over a lot of shit too.
Yeah,
okay.
Exactly.
We won't attack each other. You take over your stuff. We'll take over ours.
Yeah, just don't.
You stay over there. I'll stay over here.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So I mean, there's nothing stopping Germany from coming out instead of making the declaration of war 2 days later. All they needed to do really is if the Germans come out and go, no, we disavowed the Japanese. We didn't know anything about this, and we don't want anything to do with the United States. We have no malice or anything like that. We send our condolences to those who perished in that terrible gutless attack. Well, now Roosevelt's got nothing because the American people don't give a sweet flying F about what's going on in the European theater.
Because as you said, they were done with wars in Europe.
Yeah,
they still remembered World War One, and they were like, nah, let them do their own thing.
Yeah,
and
it doesn't confront us.
Where Germany messed up, and I know you've heard the quote before. After the attack on Pearl Harbor, and I forget who did the quote. You may know more than me, but we've awakened a sleeping giant.
Yeah, that was actually the Japanese.
Well, I mean, I know it was that. I didn't remember who exactly said it, but I know it was.
Yeah, it was the Japanese. It was the leader of the Armada.
Yeah, it was okay. I'm gonna do what you told me to, but we just fucked up really bad.
Oh yeah. Well, and it was funny because going into Pearl Harbor, the admirals and that were planning the battle were like, we have to take them out and take them out quick because in a prolonged war we can't win. This has got to be force them to the table real quick, or this is not going to end well.
Because
and they knew that going in.
Yeah, because even if they took out the Southern Fleet in Pearl Harbor, we had way more resources and way more.
Well, yeah, and you had a nice thing called the Western Fleet that you could bring over.
All you had to do was move it.
That's right.
Okay, you blew a lot of our shit up. Guess what? We have the second string that we're going to bring in.
Yeah, and if they're not focused on Germany, they have no reason to have a fleet in the Atlantic.
Yeah, exactly.
So
if Germany hadn't declared war, then okay, the East Coast is fine because that's going on in Europe. We're not worried about it.
Yeah.
So we're going to move all this stuff over to the South Pacific.
Yeah. So, I really think that if even if Germany doesn't declare war in 42, eventually the Americans are going to be brought into World War II, but probably not till 44, 45. Maybe late 43, but not 42.
It would have had to be dire straits for England. And like you said, even London had fell for us to enter the European battlefields. Because, as you said, we were hit by the Japanese.
Yeah. And that's
directly. We were directly hit by the Japanese.
Yeah.
We would have put 150% of our efforts into eradicating or beating, however you want to say it, the Japanese. And the interesting thing is, how much quicker would the War of the Pacific been won?
I don't think
we could have
changes.
Put 100%. You don't think it changes?
No, I don't think it changes. The only thing that may change is you might get it earlier, 45. But even, because you got to think about it this way: you're coming out of losing all those ships in Pearl Harbor.
Yeah, that's a good point. And
you've still
you would have to move. You would have to move.
You still got to move everything over. You got to rebuild.
Eastern Fleet.
Yeah, you got to rebuild, and you got to get troops over there. You got to get troops trained. So you're still not doing the island hops until 43, because you've got to get that fleet built. And if Midway goes historically, you're still good, but you're still you still need those carriers, and ships take the same amount of time to build, whether you're whether you're in the Western Front or not.
Yeah,
so,
that's true. Yeah,
right.
You would still have to take time to lick your wounds.
Yeah,
because a great deal of the Pacific Fleet had been wiped out. So even if you could reposition assets from
and
East Coast
in a way, I think the
Pacific
body count could be higher, because in this scenario, Roosevelt is going to be pressured to launch a counterattack
and throw everything he can.
And that might actually hurt the Americans, because they're not able to build.
I could totally see that.
Right, they're not able to build like they were historically. Right, people were switched their focus from Japan to Germany, and they were able to build that fleet. They were able to, kind of lick their wounds a little bit in Australia, and go, okay, now we counterattack when we have the proper. Because the first naval battles between the Japanese and the Americans did not go well, because they had to change doctrine, they had to change everything, and your torpedoes sucked right out of the gate. But sorry,
which is a conversation we've had a long time ago.
Yeah,
but yeah,
we did, yes. But I really think it would have changed everything, because Roosevelt would have been pressured. He wouldn't have been able to just sit back and plan. The coals would have been put under his feet to, no, okay, they're kicking our ass. Why aren't we retaliating? Why aren't we?
See,
Why aren't we attacking them? And that could have put the United States into going into war or battle that they weren't ready for.
see, I
And that
never even
could
thought
have
of it that way, but
that
you're
that
right.
could have
He would have been pressured to prematurely push back against the Japanese instead of taking time, like you said,
uh-huh.
rebuilding, training a necessary amount of troops, and instead he would have thrown every last
Yeah.
thing that was currently available at the Japanese, and at the beginning it would have been a massacre.
Yeah,
I
it
mean,
would have gone bad. It would have gone badly.
it would have been really bad for
I mean,
the
the United
United
States
States.
still wins. I mean, at the end of the day, let's not kid ourselves.
Yeah,
The
I
United
mean,
States will still
eventually, yeah,
outproduce and
but
out
there,
manufacture the Japanese any day of the week. But
but
it's
there
going
would
to
have
be a
been
higher
many
body count.
there would have been many growing pains
Yes, because a lot
he
of the
would want
stuff
to
learned in the
throw
West.
everything he had at
Yeah,
them.
yeah, he would have been forced to. He wouldn't have been able to
Yeah,
do the historical buildup.
and unfortunately, the first forces he threw at them would have basically been cannon fodder for him
Yeah,
to quiet down everybody complaining about
yeah,
we need to get him, we need to get him, we need to get him, instead of saying, hey, wait a minute, we got the Japanese to worry about, we got the Germans to worry about, let's build everything back up, let's take
yeah,
a step back. It would have been throw everything we possibly can at them, even though we're not ready. And
yeah. And it
the
actually could have
Japanese
changed.
would have
It could
cleaned
have
our
changed
plate to start with.
because and this just hit me, and I'm going way longer than I wanted to, but oh well. This is another thing to think about. Let's just say that the opening to so Japan attacks, Midway stays the way it is. They got the win back, but then the attacks, like the original, like even Guadalcanal was an absolute shit show historically.
Yes,
Now
it
if
was.
if you're pressuring now for an even bigger response and it's going badly, wasn't Roosevelt elected in 43? Re-elect?
I would have to look it up. I don't know.
43, I think.
Off the top of my head. I would have to look it
Because
up.
I think they had an election because he was in his fourth term.
So there's the possibility that
Of
if it had been a
if
super
it's going
shit
badly,
show, that he could have been replaced,
he could have been replaced.
which could have also taken it on a whole other.
Yeah, a whole
Turn.
different. Yeah, because I'm pretty sure there was an election during the war. I'm pretty sure, which Roosevelt won, which made him. But if the war isn't going well, he doesn't win that war. He doesn't win that election.
Yeah, because as you said, if we threw everything against the Japanese when we weren't ready, he would not
No,
have won the re-election because somebody that would obviously have been their
that would have been their
platform.
speaking point, right? That would have been their platform.
That would have been their platform. Is there's however many thousands and thousands of Americans that have been killed. Your sons have been killed
Yeah.
because of this.
And I could imagine the smear campaigns being, instead of being prepared for the Japanese, he was getting rid of all of our preparations and selling it to the British for the Germans. It would have been like a major smear campaign, especially if the Pacific Theater isn't going well during the election.
It was 1944.
Yeah.
So yeah,
So
1944 was when he was reelected
Yeah. So if he's
during the World War II time frame.
Yeah, so if he's not, if the Pacific isn't going well, that could have changed that whole theatrical too, because
And then it's, as we've said, that well, this is what if, but then the
Yeah.
what if is if he had been beaten, what would have happened after he had been beaten? With the Japanese, would we basically pull out of the Pacific and say, please leave us alone and we'll leave you alone? Would we go back to the isolation of Europe is not our problem?
Well, I think if the way I see it going is if Roosevelt, for whatever reason, loses the 44 election, whoever beats him is going to be running a Pacific only America, America first platform. We got to, beat back the Japanese. We got to take back what's ours. I think you would have seen a drastic reduction in the help to Britain, Russia, and the traditional allies.
That's a good point. Is why are we giving aid to Europe
when we need it ourselves?
When we have American sons dying in the Pacific.
Yeah, because they don't have those supplies.
Yeah, let's put 100% of our effort into the war in the Pacific.
Yep.
And basically, to hell with Europe. That's not our problem.
That's not our problem. And yeah, I mean that opens a whole new can of worms, because then if you look at it just briefly, can Russia push back as they did historically without Lend-Lease? Can Britain push back without Lend-Lease?
I don't think Britain could.
I don't think Russia could either.
The only way, and I'm not saying they could successfully, the only way that Russia could was the fact that they're known for just throwing everybody they can. I mean, we've seen the movie Enemy at the Gates, whether it's, historically
accurate or not. Yeah, there's another story.
Of them just saying, you have a rifle, follow the guy that has a rifle.
Yeah, that's historically accurate, though.
When the guy with the rifle gets shot, you pick up the rifle. They basically just threw everybody they could. And if 20,000 people get killed, okay.
And next.
We have more people. So.
Yeah, but the problem with that is a lot of the supplies that allowed the Russians to do even that was because they were getting it from the States.
Yeah.
And if that now stops, I mean, there was a time, I think in 1943, Stalin was threatening, early 1942 or late 1942, early 1943. Stalin was threatening to go to the peace table with Germany if he had to, because he was not going to lose Russia. Now, if Lend-Lease all of a sudden dries up, that's a possibility.
That's a very good point, because I mean, they obviously don't want to lose Russia, so he's going to go to the peace table.
That's right.
And he can't keep up without Lend-Lease, so he's obviously not going to give up Russia. So, that lends him to go to the peace table and be basically like, hey, leave us alone.
Yeah.
We're going to leave you alone. And we don't care what happens in the rest of Europe as long as you leave us alone.
Yeah. So, it definitely changes a lot more than just, does the United States enter, do they still continue Lend-Lease? Do they still, because that's going to be a big talking point. Why are we wasting all these resources in this battlefield we're not even in? And
yeah, and I agree with you. I think 100% as soon as war was declared on Japan, obviously because they attacked us first. So I agree. If Germany had not declared war, then all of the Lend-Lease would have been gone.
Yeah. Eventually, yeah. I don't see that sticking because the American people are going to throw a fit.
Yeah,
especially
it would
once the
have
body
all
count starts to climb.
it would have all yeah, it may have continued for a little bit, like you were saying, but as
Hmm.
soon as the body count in the Pacific started to rise, it would be like you said, why are we helping these people in continental Europe that's not anything to do with us?
Yeah,
They attacked us on one of our home islands.
yeah,
So we're
and we
putting
those
100% of
supplies
what
for
we
our
have
boys.
to. Yeah, we have boys dying in the Pacific. Why are we giving England or Russia
Anything.
support at all
Yeah,
when we have our sons dying in the Pacific? So
yeah.
yeah,
That
I
need that
agree.
tank more than they do.
It
Yeah,
it wouldn't have happened 100% right away, but I agree with you. As soon as the body count started to rise, Lend Lease would have been gone.
yeah. It would have been done. And that changes the
And
whole
well,
European conflict.
oh, it definitely does because, and I don't think it would have even been a gradual thing. I think it would have been one day there's Lend Lease, the next day, sorry,
Yeah,
we have to deal with what we have to deal with. So
yeah.
that's all
Sorry,
gone.
but yeah,
Good luck.
yeah. You get that last shipment, and I'm sorry, but
Yeah,
politically, it's suicide for me to help you right now. So, because if you think
yeah,
about it,
and
like mid 43, he's already gearing up for 44. He can't go into an election with people going, well, you care more about British soldiers and Russian soldiers than you do our own boys who are bleeding in the Pacific. You're sending all their supplies into a battlefield we're not even involved in. Yeah, that could look really bad on Roosevelt going into 44. So
yeah,
yeah,
and
Lend Lease goes bye bye quick.
I agree. If it had stayed a Pacific campaign totally, and Roosevelt hadn't moved everything to the Pacific theater, he would not have got reelected.
Nope.
Period.
But with that, folks, I'm gonna wrap this up. But before I do, Honstar, tell us about your channel, what you do, where people can find you, all that good stuff.
Hey everybody, I'm Honstar, youtube.com/Honstar. I do Sunday night streams every Sunday at 11 p.m. Eastern Time. I do Name That Tune, Jackbox Game Night. Every now and then I do an interview of a creator or somebody like that. The main thing you need to know is if you show up on my channel at 11 p.m. Eastern Time on any Sunday, something fun's going to be going on. So you can also follow me on Twitter and Instagram at HonstarYT. And Canuck, I appreciate you having me on here. You know I'm a history buff, kind of like you. And
Yes,
this has been a good time. This has been a good conversation.
absolutely awesome. All right, and for me, everybody knows Rambling Canuck at Rambling Canuck or at Rambling Canuck underscore or Rambling underscore Canuck. I'll get that right one of these days. On Twitter, I also have History with R&R. Hopefully, we're going to get that up to 200 by the end of April. I'm hoping. I have the store. Go check it out if you want. The link will be in the description. And until next time, take her easy, folks.